Right, I'm hitting live.
Anyway, okay.
Welcome to the Murali End. My name's Mark Machado. I'm joined by Sri Lanka's #1 cricket historian Nicholas Brooks. I'm joined by Sri Lanka's #1 journalist Estelle Vasu-Devon, and I'm also joined by the professor of cricketology, my cousin across the pond, Dominic Machado. We are here today to pay our final respects to that first test between Australia and Sri Lanka at Galle, where Australia gave us one thundering slap. And any thoughts we had above our station were purely spread across the Indian Ocean and have drifted off to the South Pole by now, as Sri Lanka basically turned up just to be there physically but not mentally. I don't know what exactly happened. If you've got any thoughts on it, or want to send your prayers to the Sri Lankan cricket team, get into the comments, let us know. We'll read them all out at the end. Don't worry, Ruben, we've seen your comment. We'll get to that as well. But I think the only place to start is with you, Estelle, because you were there. You lived through that torturous effort, if you can call it that, for what, 3 and a bit days in Galle?
Yeah, I mean, it was painful, as you can imagine. Sri Lanka's heaviest ever loss, right? And some of those sessions, I was telling you guys, like that session when Prabhat was just bowling outside the leg stump to Smith, and he was just padding everything away. It was full on, like, those earlier days where you get those flat, horrible pitches and draws on the cards. Except Sri Lanka couldn't bat, right? I mean, conceding 650 is one thing, and then to come out and bat the way they did was something else. I think to me, I think we'll probably discuss it more, but like, to me, it was the batting that was more disappointing, because I felt like the bowlers created opportunities and we didn't take them, and therefore, we conceded 650. But like the batting, some of those shots, I mean, I think I can be fairly certain that they got a earful from Sanat Jayasuriya.
I think that's absolutely true. I mean, you could, like, Sadath is fully in his uncle mode, like, era now, right? So he definitely would have been screaming and shouting at them. Let's jump straight into that question, though, Estelle. What was worse, the batting or bowling? Nick, you can have your say, and then we'll come to Dom.
It's a really, really difficult question. I think Sri Lanka were bad at absolutely everything during this test. Estelle just touched on 2 missed reviews, 2 drop chances in the first session. But I thought the bowling showed a lack of variety, a lack of an ability to think on their feet. I thought the pace was too slow. There was no sort of desire to mix things up. And that extends for me to the captain as well, Dhananjaya de Silva, who basically bowled 3 bowlers for 2+ days, right? Just, it's a side point. I don't know, we need to keep things broad for the start, but I saw a ball bowled on the first day by Asitha Fernando. He bowled a bouncer to Usman Khawaja well outside the off stump, and it grubbered through. And like, then he doesn't come back and bowl again. Like, try something. Let him bowl bounces at the stumps with a pitch that is a bit up and down. It's dangerous. If the batsmen are coming down and stepping and hitting you back over their head, try bowling flat and full and wide to just at least throw them off their game. I mean, do something, not just bowl leg stump to try and stem the flow of runs. I thought it was poor in the field from Sri Lanka, and I thought the lack of application with the bat was shocking. Sanath said it at the end. I got a quote from him. There was a serious problem with shot selection as well as handling situations. I think that about sums it up. Sorry, I'm ranting now, but is there any team whose batters get out more between 20 and 50 than Sri Lanka? And I mean, in the second innings, I made a note of this because it was so bad. Chandimal 31, Angelo 41, Kamindu 32, DDS 39, Kusal 34. So everyone's got to 30. All of them are striking at above 60, and no one gets to 50. I think Sri Lanka shouldn't have been far off drawing that test. I think they should have at least taken it into day 5 with the bat. And I think this feeds into more long-standing problems. I made a little note of this before we came on. So some of the senior players' stats in recent times. So Angelo has had 19 innings since his last 100. Of those 19 innings, 13 have been 20+ scores. He's made 4 50s, 1 75+ score. DDS has gone 15 innings since his last 100. He's had 10 20 plus scores in those 15 innings, 650s, nothing above 75. Chandimal in his last 19 innings has got 12 20 plus scores. He's made 650s, 4 north of 75 and 100. So it's a recurring theme that the experienced batters, who are the guys who you should be calling upon to make real contributions, are getting in and getting out. And I don't know what to say about it.
Dom, anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I think, it was horrible all around. I think the DDS captaincy is something that needs more discussion, right? The reviews that were not taken got pretty significant uproar from the fielders, but in the end they didn't take the review, so I don't know what the system looks like. And if anything, in the past we've always blamed Sri Lanka for being too excessive with reviews, reviewing stupid things where it's obvious that it's not out, or it pitched outside leg stump, it can't be out. But the lack of ideas in terms of, okay, we'll just bowl leg stump to Steve Smith and make it work, that's the stuff that's shocking and subpar. And it's not as if the bowlers can't do it. We've seen Prabhat Jayasuriya bowl fairly quickly, especially in the LPL and things like that. They have the skill to do it. I think they need to be empowered to do it. And then if you're going to have Asita there, you got to let him bowl. You got to let him take advantage of the wicket. And, I agree with Estelle and Nick that, yes, the batting was terrible. I think the ball, the dismissal that struck me the most was DDS running past the ball in the first innings. And it's just like, what are you doing? What is the purpose of doing that? I think Nick's stats of the number of times these guys are getting in and not making scores. And we're not talking about junior players. We're talking about senior players, right? Players who know how to score big runs, who scored lots of hundreds in their career. It's inexcusable for them to bat like that. And, I thought on the end of the third day when we got the rain let off, I thought, okay, now we have a chance to actually properly bat out this match. And they didn't do that. They weren't doing it. And I think they should be taken to task for it. It was not a game that was beyond their reach, a game that they were like incapable of beating this unbeatable Australian side. That's not what it was.
There's a lot to go into. The thing that stands out for me when I think about this isn't the missed reviews early on. It's actually Ashada Fernando's reviews when he was batting. I mean, those are two of the worst reviews I've ever seen in cricket, and I just think it was typical and symptomatic of where our head was at, like in those moments, because it's the most plum LBW. It's almost like a textbook LBW, right? And he goes up and reviews it, and you're thinking maybe he's hit it, maybe he thinks he's hit it, and then you see it come through, and they're both basically the same as well, right? And you see it come through, and you're like, oh no, he's just reviewed because he's panicked. And I just think the minute the Australians got runs on the board, they absolutely panicked. This was not meant to happen. We were not meant to be a team that lost our head. We were meant to be a team that was fully experienced, with a number of seniors in the side who held it together when the team when chaos was unfolding around us and it wasn't working the way it's meant to work. However, the senior players lost their head quite clearly. The senior players aren't bringing runs into the side quite clearly. We can go back. You can look at Dimmon's stats. It's ages since he got a score. We're not moving as a team. We're not progressing. When you go back to that win in the Oval in September, you think where we're at now. It's been failure after failure after failure since then. We need wholesale changes. I don't know if that's changing the captain, whether it's dividing the squad up, dividing the system up and getting in a specialist red ball coach. Which young players are coming through that need to blood in? Now I look at that test just gone, and I think, well, I'm happy Dimmock's going to get 100 test caps. He fully deserves it, but it's yet another opportunity wasted to bring someone else in to blood them and get them ready for another World Test Championship. I mean, Angelo, he's been great, but it's his time's up. Sadly, I'm gutted to say it because he's about the same age as me. But I think the the ball's moving slightly too fast from these days. Sorry, I was going to say Dom, go for it, but I think we just lost Dom. I mean, what was your takeaway from the whole situation when it unfolded, Estelle? What did you come away from Gaul thinking needs to happen and needs to change?
I like just to get on what Dom was saying as well, right, about the batting and some of the choices that were made, and if you are being so utterly like, if you're talking about the bowlers, as I mentioned, there were 4 to 5 missed chances, opportunities for wickets in the first couple of sessions, right? So if those had gone the other way, we might be talking about a completely different result. But and then you also have to accept that, okay, Smith, Khawaja, guys who play spin well, they've toured Sri Lanka before. English debutant, but he's also a guy who plays spin really well. Okay, you can give them credit, right? But when you look at the batting, if you are being so utterly outplayed by a visiting team and not a team from the subcontinent, from the in the batting side, then that's a massive issue, right? And we've spoken so much about the experience in this side and how it's so important to their success. But as Nick so clearly pointed out, the runs are not coming from the experienced players, and the impactful innings are not coming from the experienced players. So how long do you have to wait until, and I agree, right? Dimut Karunaratne does deserve the 100 tests as much as you can deserve anything in professional sport. But at the same time, it's an opportunity missed by just holding on to players that are so clearly beyond their time, right? Like, I mean, you have to make difficult decisions. That's how professional sport is. You can't say, okay, we're going to hold on, let them play this, hopefully that. What are we going to do if one of them gets 100 in the next test? Does that mean that that time gets extended another year or another cycle? I don't know. It's a big, I think there's a lot of thought that needs to be going into the test team in particular, because it's the format that Sri Lanka has been relatively good at, right? At the same time, in terms of the bowling, the fact that they were not willing to try anything, and the idea of the pace they were bowling has come up a lot, right? And I spoke to Jared about it in our review of the test, and what he said is that it's not really possible to bring it up at that speed, to those speeds, without giving up like your revolutions and without giving up something, right? And I also think there is a factor that Sri Lanka bowled on the first 2 days of the test, where there was a lot less on offer than when the Australians bowled, right? So they could bowl quicker and get more turn. But the bowling changes, whether it was coming around the wicket, I mean, like, it's incredible when you watch Steve Smith captaining a team, right? Every single ball he's on the move and he's making little adjustments and little changes. And I think if you look back at the dismissals, how many of those catches were taken by fielders that were not really in a conventional, like a deep fielder or inside the circle? Like, you had so many catches that were taken in between, right? And it was basically things moving according to plan. My takeaway was that Sri Lanka came into this test just going through the motions. They had no specific plans, because if you look at Australia's plans, right, we knew Head was going to open. We knew that. They gave that away, right? They basically told the media that Head is going to open, Constance is not playing. Most likely, I mean, if you were paying any attention, you would have known English is going to play. I mean, there were videos online everywhere about like how they were practicing the sweeps and reverse sweeps. So it didn't feel like there was anything discussed to counter those things, right? And Jeffrey Van der Sar was at the press conference, I think following day 2 or day 3, and he spoke about identifying that the Australians are bowling quicker and identifying certain aspects, but it didn't feel like Sri Lanka were trying to do anything differently to make an impact, right? Like, and you look at Mitchell Starc, how he was used, is completely different to how Asita was used. Asita was basically given the first new ball, and then, when like there was nothing, no other choice, he was given the ball. I thought like even at the beginning of day 2, new ball was 1 over old. They went for Nishan Pires again, right? And Nishan Pires is in his second test. So you need to be putting your experienced players in that position that they can make an impact for you. And I thought the thinking and the planning was just absent.
I was going to say, Estelle, what DDS said is the toss is so important. You cannot be reliant on winning the toss in a test match. That is, you have no control over that, right? Obviously, at Gaul, you want to get in, score big runs first, right? We all know that's the formula, but that cannot be the plan. And we talked about sweeps, like actually on this show last week. We said, how are that? Like everyone knew, right? When non-subcontinent teams come to Sri Lanka, they're going to sweep, right? That's how they feel most comfortable playing. And, we know from watching cricket, we know, especially in the limited over game, one of the ways is bowl flatter and faster, right? And they did not use it. And they have a number of limited over spinners who are really good at negating the sweep, right? Like you think of Deekshana, you think of, they know this. And the thing that's kind of surprising to me is when they
I can't hear Dom.
I can't hear Dom either. I'm glad it's not just me.
Yeah. I think somebody
Sorry.
might have pulled the cord.
No, okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, he's back.
Yeah.
No, can you hear me?
We thought someone from SLC might have got into the system.
No, I was just saying they bowled much faster against New Zealand. Nishan Pires, I remember that was one of the things I noticed was he was bowling high 80s and low 90s. So, and the fact that you don't know how to bowl at Gaul, you don't know how to counter the sweep at Gaul, the place where you've been playing all your test matches, is just absolutely inexcusable. And I think we have to talk about PL. PL was at the press conference talking about bowling spin. He has been there for 15 years now, and our spinners have gotten worse under him. We've wasted a good number of spinners, and I think we need to really rethink that. And who did Australia come in with their bowling coach? Rangana Herath.
It's a total disaster. Estelle, what was PL saying in the press conference?
I mean, he spoke about how well Australia were playing, right? I mean, it's a... Sometimes I feel like you don't really get much insight at Sri Lanka press conferences. It's like you can go to some of the other teams' press cons and you do get a lot of insight into the thinking and how the planning is done, and of course not like information that can be used against them, but like there's insight. But I don't feel like we get that, so we don't know what I mean. Sanath is actually not too bad, but like I feel like you don't really... It's very difficult to understand what their thinking is as well. Like I said, like Pandase specifically said, they bowl a lot faster than us, therefore it's tougher to play. Okay, Sri Lanka, you can't jack up your pace by 10 kilometers an hour all of a sudden. Let's say it can't be done. But what else was happening? Nothing, right? And I think it's also very telling that the guy who was brought in as like the extra spinner, was the guy who ended up like being the best bowler in that game, right? Not to be too critical of Prabhat also, but like it is about adapting to the conditions, and trying to... if what you've done all these years and what's been successful for you is not working, do you have the capacity to try something different?
Sometimes I think when you talk about Pramath, when you're watching him bowl, I feel like he's always looking for the perfect ball. a post to try and set people up. It kind of reminds me of what people used to say about Arsenal Football Club, where they're trying to just, have to score the perfect goal, opposed to kind of just try and, get the
Score
3
goal.
points. Yeah. And we big Prabhath up a lot, and I love him, and he's, there's so much love and adore about the man. But let's be honest, that was his worst test for Sri Lanka, right? I mean, we talk about, Gaul being his place. He's the king of the Gaulatoire, but oh my gosh, like none of his weapons were sharp that day. He just couldn't, it just had a horrendous time, didn't he, Nick?
Yeah, and look, I think we've gotten to a stage where it would be remiss of us to say that this test was an anomaly without wanting to be too harsh on Prabha, who's a very likable cricketer and who's been fantastic for Sri Lanka in Gaul. I think he has consistently been found to be a bit short of craft and ideas on better batting pitches. And I take Estelle's point about bowling faster. You can't just jack it up 10 Ks, but I think you can bowl the odd ball flatter and faster. You can try and go wider. You can just do something. I don't see a lot of invention from either Prabhath or from DDS when things are going badly. It seems like they almost go into a kind of autopilot sleep mode and just bowl and think, no, our wicket will fall eventually. And I mean, it's frustrating to watch. It can't be easy to play, but I would just like to see them try anything, even if it's Asitha bowling 3 foot outside off stump with a packed offside field, like at least you can buy a wicket or you make the batters do something different. I mean, this test also was a real indication of how much scoreboard pressure can impact a game. And, Nishan Pires looked fantastic against New Zealand on a slightly better pitch to bowl on, but with big runs on the board. Here on the first day, putting the ball in that same slot over and over again, and it was just one step and back over his head. I mean, I felt like we saw that so many times in the first session. And for me, Vanders was by far the pick of the 3 spinners. He does bowl bad balls as leg spinners are wont to do, but he at least threatened, didn't he?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I take Estelle's point about not being that varying pace is difficult, but there's a couple of things. One, I have seen Prabhath vary his pace. In the LPL, he was bowling fast darters that are about 100 kph, and at least try it, right? I think that's kind of one of the things. The other thing is that if you're finding that fast spin is working well, you do have fast spinners. You have someone like a Wellalage, right? You have someone like a Thikshana. Okay, maybe you can't just summon them up for tests, right? But there are guys in the setup who have those capabilities. And I think the lack of plans, right? So Australia had a plan for the Sri Lankan batters who like to sweep. So against Kusal Mendis, his first dismissal, right? They were like, okay, he's going to play the sweep. He's going to play aggressively. We're going to toss it just a little bit wider outside the off stump and make him fetch it, right? And then, as Estelle said, they had the fielder positioned halfway between mid-wicket and cow corner, right? And the ball goes straight to him, right? There was just it was clear they had thought that through, right? And if the Australians are going to attack with the sweep, you at least have to have a plan. And the fact that the plan is go to a negative line, right, where you're just asking them to kick the ball. And of all the batters, to go to a negative line, you go to Steve Smith, one of 3 guys in the world who will kick that ball every time because he has that mentality. He scored 10,000 test runs. He's not going to he's not going to just get out because he gets frustrated for 6 balls. That's not a valid tactic. And I think, we kind of raised the flag on this with DDS in England, right? That there are times where the plans run out, and what do you do?
The slogan of Sri Lankan tourism at the moment is "You will come back for more," and undoubtedly. Undoubtedly, Uzi Khawaja all the way down to whoever's playing number 11 is coming back for more. Like, I mean, it just couldn't be more hospitable if we tried. I don't like Sri Lanka cricket. Tell you, we speak to the people at SLC and they tell you about the brain center, tell you about their into analytics and the cutting edge of it. Like, what are they doing? Like, where's their data? Like, what is that? They're just turning up to these matches clearly without any plans.
So, friend of the show. Go ahead.
Go on, Tom.
Oh, I was going to say, like, but also there is this pattern of starting badly, right? Every single time something's on the line and we start a series, whether it's test or limited overs, we start really badly. And this was the case. I mean, a lot of people have been asking me, okay, do you think that Sri Lanka can come back? I think they can, because they did this same thing in the previous series. Like the previous time we faced Australia, got thrashed by 10 wickets in the first test. Of course, not as big a loss as this. And then they won it by an innings in the next game. So it feels like they need to be kicked up the backside to kind of start like doing something and start thinking. To me, it's like, skill wise, you can't say they're lacking in skill to play in Sri Lanka, right? Because they've been making their runs and taking their wickets in Sri Lanka. So then what is it? Is it the strategic side of things that is missing out, or like the mental side of things? Like we've said so many times, right? Like it felt like they had no plans. And also the batters, like the temperament is something to be questioned, some of those shots.
So I don't think you can, like, we talk about the kind of mental side of things, right? And maybe that comes into it. But actually, when you look at that game, and you can look at a Charlotte's reviews and be like, mentally, he's not doing that right, okay? But there should be enough players there who have done everything twice now, right? That can go, right, guys, we just need to drop anchor here. Just like stay at your crease, just like keep batting. Or people going, right, when we're bowling, this line isn't working, we need to do something different. That's not happening. Like, there's enough players there, there's enough caps. Sri Lanka are never ever gonna have this many caps in the test side ever again. We can like almost definitively, unless something major happens in test cricket, we could definitively say that, right? So I mean, it's like, what is the difference between these two teams? It's coming into this, right? I still say, I thought Uzi Khawaja, who's probably my favourite Australian player ever, I thought he was probably at like pretty close to the end of his test career, right? Yep. I thought Steve Smith was gone. I thought, Marnus, like, actually, he probably is gone. And I thought Travis Head was a big risk opening the batting, right? And then, like, you get down and you're like, this isn't really a vintage Australian team in many regards. Or if it is, their best players should be well past their peak, right? This shouldn't be a team that is coming and doing this to us in Gaul. Like, we have let this happen to us by being underprepared. And I think the sad thing is, the reason why I'm being so finger pointing at it is because I think there's a lot of people involved in that setup who think this team is prepared, who think this team were ready to go out and win, who think this team did have plans for it. When the reality is they had a plan A, and then when that didn't work, they might have thought about plan B, but that wasn't fully developed, and there definitely wasn't anything beyond that. There was no plan C, no plan D. There was no try to figure out how to get certain people out. That was all gone. So what is going on in that brain center? I don't know. Dom, have you got any ideas?
Yeah, I was going to say, friend of the show, Proud Navaratnam, put out a tweet saying SLC has access to ball tracking data by the end of the day. Right? So what they should be doing, right? You get hammered on day one. Fine. Right? That happens sometimes. You should be looking and seeing what the hell actually happened. Right? And you should be talking to those bowlers. You should be talking to your captain. And you should be figuring out, okay, this is what we did. This is what they scored against. We have to at least try something different. We have to make a difference here. And then the lack of, like, and the thing is, one of the things that speaks to bad preparation is the fact that we have seen in previous tests, Sri Lankan batters make changes and bowlers make changes from between the first and the second test. right? Whether it's batting out of your crease a little bit, whether it's changing the lines that you're bowling, whether you're changing the strategies. So if you're making those changes in test 2 and 3, that means that you're coming into it with a plan that's so far off base that it's not working, and you immediately have to adjust, right? And that is unacceptable. I think that's just it's really poor. I think just to pick up on the point about Ashada, right? Like, it speaks to the mentality that his immediate, like, he has been out of the side for what, 3 years now, and immediately, right, upon coming back in, he wants to review to save his, he's reviewing these plum LBWs. That's the pressure he's feeling, is like, I need to score runs to ensure that I'm in the team, rather than thinking, okay, how do we as a team win this test match? And I think it goes to the brainless batting, right? Everyone's trying to score runs and look good doing it. They're trying to get just enough runs to their name where it's not like, oh, he's averaging 3 over the last 10 test matches. It's, oh, well, he averages 35. He's not really that bad. The one downside, Mark, that I will say is that Usman Khawaja is older than Angelo Matthews. So him scoring a double century probably worked towards Angelo believing he has a few more years left in him.
Look, I want Angelo to play for as long as possible, right? But I want him to be in the team on merit of what he's currently doing. I don't want us to be going, Angelo should be in the team because 5 years ago he did this, or 2 years ago, which is kind of where we're at a stage now where we're saying Angelo should be in the side because 18 months ago he scored runs. And now you kind of, I'm at the point where I'm thinking, right, could we have put someone else in? Where would they be with all those test caps? Where would they be with the tour of South Africa and the tour of England? Angelo was meant to be our second seam option for this game. He didn't bowl at all. DDS and Kamindi couldn't bowl at all, right? I think that was a massive issue for us, right? Because we're basically going into this game thinking we've got 8 people who can bowl, and thinking we've got 7 people who can bowl, but actually only 4 of them can. Yeah. I obviously can't, but so we've really hamstrung ourselves. Nick, what, you've heard us talking, what are you thinking? Yeah. So before Nick gets into it, if you're watching, wherever you're watching on your phone or at home on your mobile, firstly hit subscribe and leave your comments. We'll get to your comments in a bit.
I think I'd echo pretty much all that's been said. I think kind of something that Estelle touched on is we want to support Sri Lanka, right? And if they lose to a team when they're thoroughly outplayed and they try everything, then as fans, there's not too much you can say, and you just say that you were outplayed by a better team. But I think they beat themselves in this test. I think that, you've got to say that Uzi and Steve Smith batted superbly, and Travis Head too on day one, putting the bowlers under pressure. But the heads drop too quickly, and it's just I feel that the attitude from the end of day one was that this test had already been lost when they came in to bat on day 3 and they were 3 down by close, having not played for very long. And then, it just kept getting worse that final morning when they lost a bundle of wickets. And then I woke up as Kamindu was batting in the second innings, and he was playing beautifully. I think I posted on our group chat that it was one of the most thrilling, frustrating innings I've ever watched, because everything was coming out in the middle of the bat, and his confidence clearly got up. He started to look like he wanted to hit everything for 4 or 6. And in the end, he came down the track and slammed Kuhneman over his head. And then next ball, it was straight down Cal Corner's throat. And you just think that that's a guy who could have easily strummed 100 if he showed a modicum of restraint. And I'm not trying to change the way Kamindu Mendes bats, because I've loved watching his exhilarating play. But the way that we've talked about Bazball, there's got to be nuance. And I do just think that Sri Lanka are playing kind of brainless cricket, and it's not the first time we've seen it. I don't know what can be done to change it. You can't even really single anyone out because there are so many culprits. It's I think the only positive thing that we can take from that test is that you have to believe that second time around, when does it start? Thursday, that things will be considerably better, because I don't think that Sri Lanka can put forward a much worse performance than that.
Should we leave it over there, guys? I feel like a proper uncle now having a right go at it. We'll
Yeah, you've turned me back into a Sri Lankan teacher shouting and ranting.
Yeah, yeah. As my parents would say, it's the only language us kids understand. But there you go. Should we talk about the under-19s? Because India won the under-19s World Cup, but actually Sri Lanka come away from it. And I think we've put, not me, I've got nothing to do with it, but the girls who went out there put on a great show, and it's got us all a bit excited for what's coming down the line in the next few years. Wouldn't you say, Estelle?
Yeah, I thought it was a really, really impressive performance by Sri Lanka. They lost just one game, and that too to India. I mean, India looked like by far the best team of that tournament, right? So I wouldn't read too much into that loss. Even in that loss, they bowled really well. It's the batting that let them down. Overall, like beating Australia in their final game after scoring just 99, I thought was exceptional. Again, I mean, I said it before as well, just the attitude they've brought to it, right? Just being aggressive and being attacking in the field and with the bat has been really good to see. Obviously, those areas that are are concerning even at the senior level, the power hitting and stuff like that, it's still a concern even at that level, where you don't really have players in comparison to other countries who can clear the boundary easily. But again, there is obviously depth, and you have to kind of give props to SLC as well, right, in this instance, because they did give them a lot of games. They gave them overseas tours. They got a lot of teams down to Sri Lanka to play them, and it's the fruits of that we're seeing. I firmly believe, like, the way their attitude going into it was because they'd been in those situations before, right? They'd been in situations where they were defending 10 off the last over, or having to score 10 off the last over. They'd been in pressure situations like that because they'd played so much in the last 2 years. So I mean, it was really, really promising, and I know a lot of other people were also impressed by how well Sri Lanka played. Unfortunately, they fell into, I would say, the wrong side of that draw, right? Because um, uh, India weren't losing anything.
Yeah.
Australia was the one they could potentially get beyond, but because they were carrying forward a loss against India from the group stage, it made it that much tougher when the game against Scotland was washed out. So unlucky, I would say. It's you can't really say that they missed out on the semi-final because they weren't good enough. It's just one of those things in tournament play.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a bit gutting about the draw, isn't it? But loads of people talking about us, Dom. There's and we've mentioned this the last 2 times. I think the really promising thing is how many of them are nowhere near ending their under-19s career, right? So some of them have got not just one more, but 2 more tournaments left to play, right?
Yeah, we're talking about 15, 16-year-olds, right? We're not talking about 18, 19-year-olds who are, this is their last go at it. And I think to kind of echo some of the points that Estelle made, they bowled well in every single match. They looked like a top draw bowling side. Like we've hyped up a lot of Sri Lankan bowling sides, in the recent past, but they performed like one. Right, the most runs they allowed were 111 to India, the eventual champions, right? And that is fantastic. They've got spinners of all sorts. I think it bodes well for the senior team in the future too, because we've talked about the lack of penetrative bowling, but it seems like they have some real match winners when it comes to that. And I think the attitude, right, as Estelle said, the not being afraid, and we've talked about this with some of the younger senior players as well, not being afraid, not being overawed by the fact, oh, we're playing Australia. No, we can go and we can beat Australia. We can put out a good performance. And I think, again, playing Australia, playing England fairly frequently, it makes it such that it's not like a bogeyman that you can't ever beat, but it's just another side that you play, and they're taking that very professional, very aggressive attitude, and they kind of have the moxie, the chutzpah that we sometimes wish we saw from other sides. They're ready to put in that fight, and that's really, really impressive. And it's one of those times where I think now, because these girls are younger, they're going to be targeting next World Cup and saying, okay, we had a little bit of an unfair shake of things. We were one of the best sides in the tournament. Let's make sure that there's no unfair shake of things next time. We're going to win every match that we can. And I think the more that they continue to play, the more that domestic leagues and domestic super leagues get supported, the more that we'll see results like this pop up, because it's very clear that there's a very talented crop of young women who are doing this. And it's just really exciting to see them do so well and to fight with so much pride. And the future looks very, very bright.
Nick, one of the kind of headlines going into the tournament for Sri Lanka was that Dilshan's daughter Limi, all singing, all dancing, literally with her father, is part of the side. She won Player of the Match against Australia, which I thought was extraordinary because she's played most of her cricket in Australia. With probably, I'd assume, with a lot of those girls. So I wonder what the Australian cricket kind of set up with thinking when that all happened, right?
Yeah, I'm sure they would have liked to have her because she bowled beautifully in that game against Australia, as did the rest of the attack. And, all of these girls, the bowling is especially young, definitely younger than the batter. I think all of them, Chamodi Praboda, Limi, Shashini Gimhani, and Pramodi Metsara, all 15 or 16. So they've got miles in the tank in terms of under-19 cricket. The amount of confidence they'll take from defending 99 against a team of Australia's quality, this is a real boost of a result. And yeah, I think as Dom touched on, we'll probably see some of these bowlers maybe getting drafted into the senior squad sooner rather than later. But the sky's the limit for them. There's so much talent knocking around. Just need to find a power hitter now. I think that Chamari, Sanath and Dilshan should start a new talent show in Sri Lanka, like Six Idol, just looking for young power hitters. And as a side note on the Dilshan family, I noticed that Dilshan's brother, Tilakaratne Sampath, is still captaining, I think it's Nugigoda Sports Club, who are above the SSC in the current, domestic first class table, with a team of like absolutely no one else I'd ever heard of. Star-studded SSC down at the bottom. What's going on there?
What a great way to segue into the Major League tournament, because there is some serious issues at SSC at the moment, and it's causing players to fly in from all over the world, isn't it, Dom?
Yeah, that was it is crazy, because they actually had a bunch of their senior men's national team players playing for them a couple weeks ago when they got back from the New Zealand tour, but now they're in danger of relegation and they've been performing very poorly. But I wonder if it's not an indictment on what we're kind of seeing in this Australia series, right? That these top players are being outplayed by players who are nowhere near as talented as them, right? It's a joke, right? Like when you look at the quality of SSC side, they could fill two very decent squads with all the players they have, right? Even the guys, like they have Chamindu Wickramasinghe, they have Nuwanindu Fernando, they have all like the best players who are not playing in the national side as well. So I think it kind of tells you how seriously this premier club is taking their class cricket.
I think I've gone, Dom. Sorry, I thought we lost you there.
No, I'm just saying it speaks to the mentality that's kind of baked into the way that Sri Lankans approach first-class cricket.
Nick, do you want to just, as our kind of historian in residence, do you want to give us a little rundown of how important SSC is to kind of Sri Lankan first-class cricket, and why everyone's a little bit panicked that they might get relegated?
Yeah, I mean, they're absolutely huge. Since its foundation in the early 20th century, it has been the club, the powerhouse. I covered in my book sometime around the late 60s, I think it might have been 1969, the Premier Trophy final, I think it was the Daily News back then, was SSC-A versus SSC-B. So literally they were fielding two separate 11s, two squads that were the best teams in Sri Lanka. I don't think they've ever been out of the top flight. SD would have a better idea of recent times than I do. But I mean, this club has just been a powerhouse of producing Sri Lankan cricketers over the decades. You go back to the likes of Anuruddin Kun, Siddharth Wetamuni, Dilip Mendis, Arjuna Ranatunga,
Arjuna.
and beyond, you know, into modern day. So I mean, yeah, it's yeah, what to say, I think it would be just an absolute shock for everyone were they relegated. But, you know, there's been a lot of talk about first class, you know, system being bloated and diluted with talent. And so perhaps this is a sign that there is competition now, and you know, things are getting serious. I don't know what to say. I'm shocked.
Actually, though, I think it's a, I mean, of course, the history and all of that is important, right? But it is a good thing that one of your top teams might, I mean, or on paper, one of your top teams. I'm just seeing the comment.
Mark,
yeah, someone said Sri Lanka's Man United. I was just thinking the same.
that that, you know, a team that has that much talent, if other teams are doing better than them, then that also speaks to how important it is that you kind of, it's not just like, you know, collecting a team of stars, right? Like, I'm looking at the scorecard from the Moors game, and you take out the guys who were asked to come back from the ILT20. So Charita Asalanka, Avishka Fernando, and Dasun. You've still got Nipun Dhananjay and Siobhan Daniel opening the batting. You've got Krishan Sanjula. Yeah. You've got Nuwanindu. You've got Nisala Taraka, Kavindu Nadishan, Pramod Madhushan, right? So you've got like 6 or 7 players who are close to playing international cricket in that side. So I mean, it's crazy to me that they would need those 3 guys to come back and Dasun Shanaka to make a FC 100, or it was 100, right?
It was 100
to make an FC 100,
and then he
for
back.
them to to kind of help them you know, stave off relegation. They still have to win one more game, I think, but yeah, it's crazy. Like, it should also, I think, be a warning to clubs in that you have to think about your player availability when you recruit, because you don't know for part of the season.
Oh, it looks like some gremlins have got into Estelle's.
SLC's trying to shut us all down. Yeah, now the SSC are getting in on it too.
SSC are getting in on that too. We're making a lot of enemies in today's show. If you're watching and like to get involved, leave us your comments. We'll get to the comments shortly. Also, don't forget to subscribe as well. We've also got a newsletter and we've got a WhatsApp channel, and you can catch us across basically every social media platform, I think, apart from Blue Sky. The only reason we don't have a Blue Sky account is because I can't work out how to have multiple accounts on my phone, but I'll figure that out soon enough, no doubt. And yeah, Estelle, I think you're back with us. We're talking about the Major League Tournament. We're talking about SSC's problems. We're talking about players going away to play franchise cricket. I mean, Dasun Shanaka is not doing the climate many favors at the moment, because he played, if you don't know, if you haven't seen it, he played a first-class game in Sri Lanka, then flew over and played an ILT20 match. Like, what looks like hours later. Obviously, there's a time difference. But, like, fair play at them. I mean, you know, that can't say Sri Lankans don't work hard, and Dasun is definitely working hard. I also saw somewhere Dre Russ has flown from the ILT20 to Bangladesh. If you're interested in franchise cricket, then we do also have a franchise show called The Big Bag that goes out on a Thursday. So kind of you can look at that and some clips from me and Nick's talking about various franchise cricket that's been happening around the world at the moment. This is the season for T20 leagues as we kind of build slowly to the IPL, the PSL season that is in a couple of months' time. Then we do have a Champions Trophy before that. I don't know what we're going to talk about in the Champions Trophy because Sri Lanka ain't involved in that.
We can talk about how Sri Lanka could have won every match.
Yeah. and what they would have done.
Analyze
right?
every game, what they would have done and how they would have won.
Sanath strategy.
Yeah. Guys, should we look at some of the comments?
Yeah.
Shall we get to the comments? Right, Ruben wrote this comment before we even got on live. With these people in the preview of the series, they were so confident that Sri Lanka will easily win the series and might even sneak into the WTC final, but optimism was smashed by a superior team. We were joking about making the final. We clearly knew that was very unlikely to happen. Well, I was,
Estelle,
I was
you
still...
didn't do. You were the one on the ground. You were supposed to slow up the over rates from Australia. That clearly didn't happen.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think they were expecting like Sri Lanka's 25-man squads, the entire name list to be announced during the match, so that we could extend a bit of the time. It didn't work.
We needed the Vasudevan pitch invasion.
Yeah.
There was a pitch invasion, by the way. He didn't even get past the boundary. I think it was when Smith hit the 100.
Who was it? An Aussie fan or a Sri Lankan fan? Or
Aussie fan, of course. In his little black.
His budgie smugglers. His budgie smugglers, I think is what they call it.
Plus, once did a pitch invasion, I think, to help the under-19s draw a game, and I was thinking of him. Rest his soul during this match, because he used to. I remember him standing at goal and shouting "Stay there, be there" over and over again, and that was exactly what we needed during this.
Yeah, I was going to say we missed that. Sorely missed that.
Yeah, stay there, be there like a teddy bear. Where was it? It wasn't there.
And Ruben, yeah, we were confident, but like, we're Sri Lanka fans. First and foremost, this is a forum for Sri Lanka fans to talk about the Sri Lankan cricket team. If you're a fan and you go into series and you're nothing but pessimistic, there's almost no point, in my opinion, right? And also, it's Gaul. This is our place. This is where we do bits. That was a totally unexpected result. I think. I thought maybe we could lose, but I didn't think we'd lose that badly. Dineth has talked about Nishan's near double century.
Wasn't it the worst bowling figures in a test for Sri Lanka, something like that? I feel bad for the guy though.
Yeah.
And I think, when your first test match against New Zealand, like everything goes the right way. And he almost gave up 200 runs in that test as well, but he happened to take 9 wickets. But I think that's you think, okay, I'm going to just stick to that same plan, especially if you're a player early in their career. I was thinking about Nick's point about Kamindu Mendes, and as a young player, right, who's still he's under 20 tests, he should be given the license to be a little aggressive. It's the guys who played 50, 60, 70, 90, 100 tests that should be staying there and allowing him to express himself. Yeah.
Here's another comment from Ruben. Asian teams should use the 25-27 WTC cycle to rebuild their teams, giving chances to new players so they'll be ready to challenge for the trophy in the 27-29 cycle. I think the big thing that we've learned about Test cricket in the last the first 3 World Test Championship cycles is actually, even though the scores and it might look like they're getting a hammering, I don't think there's a massive difference between the sides. If you look at South Africa and how much they've grown in the last 2, the course of one cycle, it shows that actually 2 years is a long time in Test cricket. I think the two issues Sri Lanka have is, firstly, we have no idea what the format of this next cycle will be, and secondly, at this point, we're just not playing enough Test cricket. That kind of works in your advantage in some ways, because it means that every win or every loss is kind of worth more as a percentage points, right? But also it means that it's just harder to get a run of results together, I think. So yeah, there's swings and roundabouts on this. I don't know if anyone else has got any other thoughts on it. No, Estelle was so hacked off. She's just disappeared, and now we're all in the wrong place. It's dear.
Oh no, Estelle.
Yeah,
you are now Estelle.
But I think, I think you've got to accept that Sri Lanka are entering into a rebuilding kind of phase. But then you look back at that home series against Pakistan and think that if that hadn't been a 2-0 defeat, which it really shouldn't have been, they would be much closer in the World Test Championship final than they are. And I think it's important that this team keeps competing in every test to show that they're worthy of playing more test cricket, you know, in this kind of flux period that we find ourselves in.
Yeah, let's get a comment. Some of the comments
I'm not
on.
sure that.
Oh, go on, Dom.
No, I was going to say, and I'm not sure that bringing in new players will necessarily be a step back. I think we've seen that with Patham and Kamindu, is that you sometimes bring in strength to bring in fresh faces, bring in new talent. Good things happen.
Got a comment from Sanjit. Also, Sri Lanka women, any series other than New Zealand in March, prepare for the ODI World Cup in 2025, like series against Australia women and South Africa. I'm going to ask Estelle this. I understand whenever there's a women's cricket question, I always go to Estelle first, which makes me look like a massive misogynist. But actually, Estelle is very close to the side. She's in touch with many of the players all the time. She's their go-to when they want to get stuff out. You know how you all follow Fabrizio Romano for football transfers? He's got the inside knowledge. Estelle is the Fabrizio Romano of Sri Lankan women's cricket. Estelle, do you know what the plans are to prepare for this World Cup beyond this a series against New Zealand?
Yeah, there hasn't been anything official, but I'm assuming there will be at least one series, because World Cup it's a World Cup year, right? And you can't go in there without any match practice. But we don't know, what the plans will be. I assume it will be announced at some point, but yeah, we're not sure what's going to happen.
Dineth has dropped in and said Nuga Gooden mention. I assume that's where you're from, Dineth. Anyone got any highlights of their time they've spent in Nuga Gooden? Go on, Estelle.
That was about TM Sampath, right?
Yeah.
I actually Googled it when I saw that they were above the SSC, because I thought there was a bar that I used to go to that was there, the Machan, which I thought was Machan Nugegoda, but it was Machan Nawala. So sorry, Nugegoda, big up Nawala.
Nice. Sachin's just sent the message in. Seems like nothing changed since 2015. Turning pictures make them look like world beaters at home and some lucky wins away. Nothing more. Do we agree? Do we not agree? Estelle, you do not agree. What do you think? We're better or worse than 2015?
I don't agree. I think over the last couple of years there has been progress, right? And I don't really subscribe to the notion that the pitches are the issue with the test match team. I think it is important to make use of home advantage in test cricket. And there you can develop your, you can work on ways to make your team better at playing in conditions that are not really spin friendly. I think the problem is the extremes, going to extremes. Like, I mean, if you look at India and you look at Pakistan, that's the mistake they made, right? Like, they went to an extreme where you're basically negating any advantage you have because you have better spinners by bringing the opposition spinners into play. I think similarly for Sri Lanka as well, Matt Kuhneman is not Prabhat Jayasuriya, right? No disrespect to him, but he doesn't have the skills, the test skill set that Prabhat has. So when you make an extreme pitch, I'm not saying this one was, but when you do, I'm just using it as an example. When you make an extreme pitch, it brings a player like that into the game, and it negates any advantage you have in having the better bowler, right? So I don't think the pitchers are a major issue in Test cricket. Inconsistency is in that, even in home conditions, sometimes we look, Sri Lanka looks like they don't know what they're doing. Like this test, right? If you're saying that Steve Smith and Usman Khawaja, a guy his test debut, can adjust better those
If you may have lost what Estelle was saying, but what she was saying is it doesn't matter if it's a home or away. Sri Lanka have an equal opportunity to embarrass themselves, regardless of where they're playing or whatever the pitch is doing. I think that kind of sums it up. I'll just get onto this one very quickly. Sanjit asked, should domestic first-class cricket be introduced for Sri Lankan women like men to improve in ODIs? I think they are kind of, there's more and more. Do you know what? We've got Estelle here. So she can tell you that there is more and more teams playing first-class cricket, right, Estelle?
Well, first class cricket is not being played. Multi-day cricket is not being played.
Oh,
right,
sorry.
in Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I feel like Chamari's mentioned that they want to try and start a two-day competition, but I feel like, sorry to be like, this is going to be an unpopular opinion, but I feel like there are things that need to be prioritized ahead of playing test cricket or playing multi-day cricket, because we don't have the we need to improve our systems for the limited overs game, because if you look at women's cricket, the ICC certainly doesn't seem to have any plans of expanding test cricket, right? So if we want to be competitive in limited overs cricket, then we need to fix those systems first before looking at two-day cricket and all of that. Sure, I mean, you'd love to see someone like Chamari playing a test match and see how they go, but as a system, I understand that you have to prioritize what's what can take you forward in world cricket, and that is white ball cricket.
I'd say as it stands, Chamari is the greatest cricketer of all time not to have played a test match. That's my opinion. I could be absolutely wrong, but I've said it, so there you go. Guys, should we leave it there? We've been the Murali End. Please hit subscribe. Please tell all your friends and your family. We will be back. Some of us will be back for the big bag later on this week. We'll talk about franchise cricket, and we'll be back same time, same place on YouTube next week. See you all later. Bye.